actually thinking about, we just came off the holidays. And so what we're wanting to wrestle with is what exactly can we learn from this whole process? And I'm setting up a few things, but Jody and I were talking about it earlier. And we were talking about it earlier, and she had a lot of really good thoughts. I only had one. And so I thought I'd let her uh, zip along for a while and we see what can come out of that. So, what on our holiday, let me just say very quickly, we had for a couple of days 18 folks here, not all the kids, not all the grandkids, but a pretty good group. And one of the things we did was called I called it a antler egg hunt. So we have, I'm sharing the screen, but I don't see it. So see if I can get it to look like something here. But a pretty good group. Yeah. And one of the things we did, sorry about that, was called I called it a antler egg hunt. Yes, I did. So it was an antler egg hunt, and here's the result. So we have this property, and we have a bunch of deer antlers that we picked up, and so I spread them out and hit them, and we took the wagon, found them, and got back without incident, and then we posed. So that was loads of fun. But what I'm wanting to think about is just from having all these grandkids around us, and some of our kids definitely uh, are folks that are homeschooling. Others are, I mean, they're all educating their kids. There's no doubt about that. But what I'm wanting to do is just kind of think of that. So, what is it? Because holidays are a change. Usually, we pause school, we're given a break, and I think there's some lessons we could learn that we can move on into the process of schooling. So, Jody, say hi and hit it.
Hey, everybody. Well, we had one set of grandkids for actually over 2 weeks. So that was a almost 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And so we played lots of Candyland and fun games like that with those little ones and just had fun on the property. We had a lot of sunny days, so that was marvelous. But one of the things I was noticing is for this set of family, in particular, they pretty much kept to their schedule as far as when they woke up, when they had their naps, and when they went to bed. Well, and meals. And I think that that was really good for the kids. As much as possible. There were a couple of days that things were maybe a little bit different. When some a little bit older cousins were here, the 5-year-old got to not have to have a rest time, things like that. But for the most part, I think it was very helpful for them to stick to that daily rhythm. And it was helpful to keep their little energy levels good, emotional levels good. So that was one good thing. And I was because they had the time, she still did a little bit of school with him each day. She's teaching him phonics, and that was great. I think that didn't, because you're not just doing something all day long. You have lag time, and I think he knew that's what he does every day, so it wasn't any big deal to him. Yeah, we're going to spend our little bit of time on phonics, and that went well. I think too that having don't stick with your discipline, how you discipline you, how what you expect for them behavior wise. Don't go, oh well, it's the holidays, just that's why they're crying, that's why they're mad, that's why they're pitching a fit or whatever. As much as possible, I would say I think it was very good to watch them stick with their discipline plans and what's expected of a child and what's not, with a little bit of flex in the fact that yes, you're at Grampy and Lovey's house and things are a little different. So it's not like they were, just hard on them, but the rules don't go away just because we're on vacation. You know, we still do this and don't do that. And I think that's really important.
Well, yeah, and you got to figure out what rules that means. But um, I mean, you had some more things that pop in your mind. But as I thought about it, what was in my mind about this question is that the holidays are an opportunity for you to see um, something really profound. And that is what I've noticed with homeschool moms and dads is we think, we tend to think that our kid doesn't like school and they're not enjoying it. And so we have these battles because it's about school and something they don't like to do. But what happens in the holidays is you get to find out, hey, they don't like a lot of things, like bedtimes, like we commonly with some of the kids that were staying here, they would watch a little cartoon of some type, a Rudolph thing or something like that. And they they turned out they watched it, but and or they may have watched two on a special night or something like that, and then that's it. But regularly, somebody would be upset because they didn't get to watch the third one. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is if you pay attention to this, what you're going to find out is the holiday actually shows you some behavioral issues that are broader. They're about the child and what they're learning. They're not about what you think the subject is. I'll give you an example. So years ago, we used to have with the parenting book, we'd have folks in our home and have banana
Pudding.
pudding. I was going to say split, but banana pudding. And we talk about parenting issues, and people bring up one. I remember one couple, some friends of ours, brought up one about a child that didn't like anything she made. And so we went through the process of the four questions and the absolute quickest way to help your child change. And what do you see? How you encouraging? What do you want to see? The four questions. So as we went through it, we set up a game plan. And within 2 days, and she told this story to us all. In 2 days, this boy, the goal was to get him to go, oh boy, one of my favorites. And within 2 days, the way we set it up, he did it. He said, oh boy, one of my favorites. And she, not remembering what we had worked out as a game plan, looked at the food and went, wow, what is it that I've finally served? And I think that's where we get tricked, that the issue is not the thing you lock in on. It's probably more about the character and the child learning to do what they need to do when they need to do it. I mean, that's one of the beauties of homeschooling, I think, is they sit down, they look at their math. Our kids did that, look at math. People notoriously don't like math. And they go, I don't feel like doing this in their head. And then they say, anyway, and then they do it. Because if you set it up properly and their goal is to get their math done, not to love math, to get their math done. And so they learn in time how to be disciplined or how to make it fun or how to with the challenge just to get it done faster, something like that. So the holidays are especially an opportunity, or vacations or any break you have, they're especially an opportunity for you to figure out or notice some behavioral challenges that are really about the child in relationship to you, not about the topic. And if I could just magically put that in your head to quit thinking that it's about the thing, because it's rarely about the thing, it's about something else. That makes sense?
We'll give another example. Like, you're saying like when they had a little fit about they're not being able to watch another cartoon, it's not about the cartoon, it's about
It's about them getting their way.
Yeah.
It's about them. It's kind of like, I mean, in a way, they're little terrorists. And if you keep negotiating with them, it'll negotiate more and negotiate more and negotiate more. And so getting clear what you want and getting them to understand, hey, this is this world. We all have things that we don't just love to do. You're not free. That's not what we're about. You're going to be free someday. You can make your own choices. But what we're about is getting you to be, what would we say, a happy adult. That's what we're aiming for. And to do that, you're going to need to learn some things. And it includes tying your shoes, and it includes doing your math, and it includes straightening your room, and it includes not interrupting when that's going on. It's going to include learning to run your emotions. That's a little part of it. So I get it, you're upset. I'm not going to manipulate the world for your upsetness. I want you to learn to get a grip on it. And, in my experience, most of the problems with kids is that they still think they have a chance at certain things. You get in these debates. The moment a child or anybody knows for a fact that something's not going to happen, it's impossible, they can't be motivated to do anymore. I've been going through this debate with people, and it's sort of like, just trust me. The example I gave recently that seems somewhat persuasive, at least to us, is, if you wanted to marry someone and they passed away, they died, you wouldn't want to marry them anymore. It's just the way it works. So the moment a child, it's not that serious, but a moment a child understands we're not doing that thing, they won't try. They'll go, well, what can we do? Once they know we're doing math, that's the game. And what we're going to do is go through whatever misery we all have to go through until every day you show up and do the math without the belly aching. But any of these examples, it happened with all kinds of stuff. They wanted cheese, and they got upset about that, or they wanted something, and you know, uh, it, they didn't want to come in and eat, or they wanted to go play. They want to go do this thing or that thing. And sometimes the answer is no, sometimes yes. I mean, most of it we're trying to say yes, but there are times we don't do that, even on the antler egg hunt. We're going out there, and one child who can be a little challenging was starting to complain, telling what he wanted to do. And I looked at him and I said, hey, you're either going to go with us and not complain and do what I say, or you can go back. And he started complaining. And I said, okay, everybody hang on. And I took his hand and started walking towards the gate to put him back in the backyard. And he stopped. He's only 4, but he stopped and went, no, oh, okay. I'll do it. And he did. But it's part of that standard and sticking with it. So
Yeah, I think having clear yeses and clear nos with them is good. If they want enough, they finally get what they want, then you are creating a world of hurt for yourself. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. And sometimes there's maybes, and sometimes there's, well, let me see how it's going, later. But if you tell them no and they whine and you end up giving it to them, that's on you. Another thing I was just noticing too, and y'all all know this, there can be so much informal learning during times like during vacations. One of ours realized that he didn't recognize his numbers. He didn't know a 2 was a 2 and a 3, but we were playing board games where he needed to know that. And I was getting a little tired of telling him every time. He can count and he could count and he could figure out, but he just didn't recognize them. And Fred took him off and spent a little bit brief time showing him, teaching him 1 through 10, just using some
mnemonics stuff.
Yeah.
I do. I have a memory course, so
and he was catching on really fast. So, and it wasn't a torture to the child. He didn't think, but it was just a fun way to learn. Cooking, there's so many different things you can learn with cooking with him. And then I was thinking today also, our manners can really be practiced a lot at vacation time, especially if you're with other family members in their home or they in yours, because there's a lot more thank yous, and for us, yes ma'am, no sir, or just a polite,
Right.
yes, or responding when they hear you, I called you, you come. There were a lot
Basics. And that comes in handy when they're about to walk in the street and you say no. If they learn to obey you, you get to avoid them, getting struck by a car or something.
And we're talking about pretty little, even waiting Christmas morning, opening presents. They had to wait on other people to open their presents. So there was a lot of just reinforcement of manners.
And that was the thing you were talking about earlier. It's an opportunity. You're still learning, you're still teaching, even though it's holiday or whatever. So every day, every opportunity, it's always an opportunity to learn, to nail down a skill, to understand, to make sense of things.
To reinforce things.
And by the way, she mentioned it. Let me just tell you, I mean, with little small children, there's not a big correlation between learning about math and doing well in math later. America leads in math in the early grades, and we're way behind 20, 24 something by the end of high school. it's not a thing. Most of what you try to teach a child, the first, up through fourth grade even, is something a sixth grader can learn in a week or so. It's just not that much. But if that jazzes you, what I was doing with him is I was showing this is 4, almost 5.
Be
Is
fun
that
in
right?
February.
So too much detail. But the the thing I did is I just did little rhymes with them. So I did 1 is bun, 2 is shoe, 3 is tree, 4 is door, 5 is hive, 6 is sticks. Okay, so I just did those 6. And then I did a drawing on each of the letters. I made a shoe on 2, and I made a bun next to 1, and turn 3. I did a backwards 3 and did a trunk. I just drew some. So just practice the rhyming and the rhyming the letters, rhyming letters. Because what I'm doing is I'm getting him to connect something he knows.
Sorry, numbers.
That's in letters.
Yeah.
So numbers. So I'm getting him to connect something he knows, like a rhyme or a thing out there, a bun or a shoe or whatever, to something he doesn't know what the shape of this number is. You can go over them enough, just write them. When I did Hebrew, I had to write out all the Hebrew letters 100 times or something just to force it in your brain because it doesn't look like anything. But there are ways to connect what they know to what they don't know, and it just makes learning easier or remembering easier because they're going to review it a few times, and before long that goes away and they just know it. 1 is 1. So
Yeah.
there's that. So what kind of questions do you have? We did have a couple written to us that I'll bring up, but if you're here live, woo, you're the priority. So what questions about this or anything else do you have that would be something you want to talk about? This is the fun part of the stage. And of course, part of the challenge is there's a delay. I do it on Zoom. It goes to YouTube. So you're probably just now hearing about it. So they're not even having the opportunity. But questions about anything, it could be about relationships, it could be about motivation, it could be about learning, education. It doesn't really matter because I'm totes free to say, I don't know, let's figure it out. And then y'all type some things in here that tend to be helpful for everybody. So what kind of questions are you facing or wrestling with, or a friend of yours who has a cousin that homeschools asked this question? It doesn't matter. So I'll grab this and try to throw it in there too, so we can get to it, so everybody can see the question. Throw it chat. Hit return. In theory, that will work. So V throws a lot of wisdom. Anything you like to share is just nice to listen to. And I do appreciate that. I'm probably going to change this and start making it a podcast, posting it some places so we can kind of get the message out. Y'all say such really sweet things. Oh, I'm seeing the problem. I can't put the whole question in.
And a lot of times it's not that y'all haven't thought of what we're saying or heard it before, or it's just you're in the trenches, and it's hard to sometimes kind of get yourself outside of the situation to think, okay, am I handling this right? Is there anything I need to be doing differently? What could I do better? And that's why, even like if we had done this pre the holidays, okay, how am I going to spend a few minutes alone or a few minutes with your spouse? How are we gonna what is our holidays gonna what do we want them to look like? Are we going to do any school or no school? Are we going to be intentional about this free time? Like, are we going to do family games or just a little bit of time of, how much TV are we going to let them watch? How much computer are we going to let our older kids do? And just kind of have a game plan ahead of time. Will make the holidays go so much smoother, because it is a disruption, but it doesn't mean it's a time to go crazy.
Well, and I'd say what you want to do is to make everything smooth. You might have some different rules, but it's school, it's not school, it's all the rest. It's the flow of life. It might be traveling across country, it might be being at a friend's house, etc. So uh yeah, so V had said I think you have a lot of wisdom. Anything you like to share is just nice. And so and we're grateful, and people say these videos are real helpful. And that's what we hope. I hope indeed they're really helpful, because part of what we've learned has been to learn the hard way. You don't have to experience everything yourself. You can watch somebody else and just learn from it. So we got this note. So, dear Fred, thank you for the opportunity. I need mid-range glasses, sorry. Thank you for the opportunity to request some questions. We love the videos that you're doing, so encouraging. We have two questions. We have lots of families around us that do science and geography with their kids. We understand that RC focuses on math, writing, and reading, and so do we. I feel like my kids are lacking behind or missing out on geography science, and not sure what age they need. They're 7 and 9, need that. They're 7 and 9. What's your advice around that? Then I'll get the second question. So geography and science, okay. The way Robinson thinks about it, um, and the way I think about it, is you're actually in education. So there's this data stage up through about 10, then there's the logic stage, and then there's the rhetoric stage. Logic is 12-ish, we're really 10-ish up, but 12, 14, they're getting into arguing, debate more. And then rhetoric is how you communicate things. So every subject's that way. You've got to know the data points, and then you got to know how it fits together, the logic of it, and then you got to use it to communicate with other people. So this is historical classical model. Well, if you understand that, science, in particular, real science, really needs physics, or excuse me, calculus, plenty of math, and it needs chemistry, basically, because especially for biology, there's a combination of physics and chemical systems. So in general, the idea is once you get your math level up to a certain point, because excuse me, yeah, math is the language of science. And so when they have a foundation in math, and then they can start working on physics and then chemistry and then biology, at the end, they're learning, we'll call it real science. What you're talking about with geography and science for 7 and 9 year olds is actually something more like uh, memory stuff, just data. It's just information. It may or may not mean anything to them. That they may know geographically the next state. We're going to this city, but they don't know unless they know how time and distance works, the math. They don't know how to calculate like you do. If I go at this speed for this period of time, we'll be there at a certain point. Rate down time equals distance. So I say all that just to get to this point, which is in your reading, you can introduce any of that. All you have to do is throw in some geography, throw in some science if you want to, and then they know lingo, etc. That's why we always did the Kirsch's Hirsch's what your kindergarten needs to know, first, second, third, fifth grade, or whatever. So there's a lot of basic things in the culture, the way we talk about things. But when you're an adult, you can move to a state, know nothing about the geography, know nothing about the industry or anything. And in a week or two, you can get a book or three and read them, and you'll know more than all your neighbors about the subject, because the power is learning how to read. I didn't see any big value in knowing the state capitals, because our kids were not going on Jeopardy or anything, in the
But there
next
were
few
plenty of
weeks.
other homeschoolers that spent time, their kids memorized all the states and all the capitals. Hey, that's cool. We
Oh
just
yeah,
want to
yeah.
focus on, for most of your time in schooling, focus on the reading, the writing, and arithmetic, and then whatever else you want to throw in there, that your kids are interested in, or you think it's important.
And here's why she's right. And here's why. Education, the way we understand it, is about skill development. And what they want to tell you out there, it's about knowledge. It's about knowing stuff. And let me tell you, it's getting worse between AI and Google and whatever else. You can just find it out. You know, if you want to know something, just hit it. If you want to know distance something, hit a maps program. Say, I want to go here. That stuff is very accessible, and kids really absorb this kind of information, even in the culture. They just catch on and absorb it. But that's not magic. You know, what it does do, any of these things does do, is it does add to their vocabulary.
I was just thinking
But
that.
throwing in a book on basics of science, you know, a little book on volcanoes periodically,
Sure.
get one out of the
Yeah.
library and let them read it,
Yeah,
or
kids
something about the United States of America, and it has a map in it and the capitals, a little something. They read all that exposure. They're going to recall way more than you think. What are you going to say?
Yeah, yeah, that's the vocabulary is very important. But let that, if they're interested in something like that, great. There's lots of books on all
Well,
those
it's
different
not
things.
just interested. She's actually asking to keep up.
Well, okay.
So
Well,
some of it is they're not interested,
I
but
gotcha.
that doesn't matter
No, and I do
because
hear that.
it's one of the things you throw in
Now,
there.
if you are, and we've said this a lot of times before, if your state requires certain things, find that out. And if you're going to put them, if you know, or pretty much know you're going to put them in a school system at some point, you need to factor that in also, just as far as what you're exposing them to.
Exactly. Well,
But as far as our kids, not that kids have to go to college or graduate from college, but all of our kids, we didn't do a lot of that. We really did the math, the reading, and the writing primarily, and they did fine.
yeah. And here's the parallel, or in addition question. The question was about, what about teaching grammar? When do you start that?
Oh,
How did she say it
I didn't see
exactly?
them.
Because it's going to be the same answer. At what age do you introduce grammar? Thanks, he's kind of regard. Okay, so grammar. I'm not fond of grammar. I'm not fond of studying grammar. I can't make any sense of why you'd study it. We know from 100 years of studies, 100 years, that the more you study grammar, the worse you write. They proved it over and over and over again. Grammar, weirdly, is something they already have in their head once they can actually read it or study it. They already intuitively have embraced it. They've learned it, and that's why they can talk to you and ask for, honey on their oatmeal. And if you understand that game, it's really reading and using language that teaches them grammar. There's not a parallel to know how, why verbs go in this order, etc. That's not a thing. And if you teach your child a lot of grammar because you're worried about what everybody thinks, what you'll find is they'll get caught up in the grammar. I've got a book over there about the 31 uses of the comma. That's why I don't teach that. It's insane. 31 uses of commas, and I got to remember them all. No, I teach in our writing course, we teach you how to do it by how it sounds because they already intuitively know it. If you want to pause there, I'll bet you a comma is going to go there. If you write it and you could say the word comma the way I teach it, if you can literally read the sentence out loud and you can say comma in there and it works, it probably needs a comma. Periods, longer stops. And so when we give, the code for all those things. So it's grammar is an intuitive thing that works with language. The way we came up with grammar is linguistics, or linguists tried to figure out how to convert it into a written form. And so tried to understand what we're doing with English, or it doesn't matter, Spanish or French or anything, or Texican. So all these different languages. But the nature of it is it's already essentially hardwired or formed into a hardwired understanding of how you do language. So the more they read, the more they're going to learn. Now, foreign language or analysis. So look, I've studied Hebrew, Greek, Latin, English, Spanish. Formally, I've studied it. I had to learn the grammars, I had to learn enough of it. And if you're doing analysis, like I was trained, to do analysis on a passage in the Bible. So I can look at language and how is this transitional word used and what's going and what's the correct order of these words for emphasis. How does that game work? If you're doing it for analysis, that's fine. But if you're trying to develop kids that are good grammatically and who can write with good grammar, it's going to be in here, and it's going to be being exposed to good information, good language. So I say all that to tell you this: didn't teach him any grammar, and yet our oldest son, when he went to school, got whatever SAT 2 was, a year or two of total credit and A's because he could write and his grammar was great. Didn't ever study it, but his grammar was great. Two of our other children, actually, was it two? Two of our other children actually taught at the Language Center at the University of Texas. So it was a job. And they basically told me, said, I don't listen to what they do. I show them what you showed us, that if it sounds right, it probably is right. And showed, especially English as a second language, a lot of the kids that show up there are, Asian, other things. So that's who they're helping, but they help them that way. And they help them gloriously. So that's really the game. Two of our kids also, their essays as freshmen, the professors came to them and said, "Can I use your essay as an example?" So the grammar was good and the structure of the essay, but they'd worked through the essay course and had us, teaching them the skill. So I say all that. If you want to study grammar, great. It's a data thing or whatever. But in their writing, if they get caught up trying to make it sound right, it's going to be a problem. And I'm going to tell you this: you're going to kill their voice and kill their creativity, because all this grammar stuff is trying to do is get technical writing, like reading a book on how to run your computer or something, the right way. But the right way, English is a democratic, excuse me, language is democratic. It's usage. That's what matters. That's how it works. And so when you begin to understand that's the game, you wouldn't dare impose Elizabethan grammar on us today, right? You wouldn't use Shakespeare's grammar on us today. And that's kind of what everybody's doing. We're trying to say, this is the grammar. And it's like, no, not quite. That's not quite how it works. We learn things and we adapt and we understand. And as we read and talk and interact, and as you say to your children, I mean, here's the best grammar you're doing. Me and Jimmy are going over to John's house. Say, Jimmy and I, you know, that's grammar training. Congratulations. What do you want to add?
No, that's perfect. If there's some reason, because they're going to be tested by somebody or something at some point, to teach them what a noun is, whatever, things like that, fine. But diagramming sentences and just different, they're just
Yeah.
no, it's not necessarily necessary unless there's some tests that they're going to have to take
Yeah,
one day or
it's
something.
not magic for education. It is when they get to analysis. They want to break it down. There's something
Right.
you can do diagramming. You can do something called a mechanical layout. Those are things they're fun to learn. But if they get the skills of reading, writing, math down, and they really have those skills, they're going to be able to teach themselves any of this stuff.
True.
All right. So get back in a rhythm groove. How to get back into good rhythm groove after the holidays? Good question. So how do you get back into the groove? And I would say, I guess you could do it a lot of ways, but in our experience, it's like, how do you get used to the water when the pool's cold, but you want to swim and everybody's swimming? It's just kind of cold to you. And the answer is you jump in, you know. And I think we just said, hey, transition. Tomorrow we're starting school again.
Yeah.
Ta-da.
Yeah.
And we're going to be back on the rhythm. And it may be bumpy or whatever a little bit, but not really.
Yeah,
It's
we didn't
that's
ease
what we
into
do.
it. It was just like,
Uh-uh.
we're home or we're back, whatever. It's a
Starts
great,
up.
it was fun time, but we're back
Yep.
to
Turn the
normal routine.
switch. It's time to do it.
Dads have,
You know,
people have to go back to work, whatever,
you don't when they get older, it's and they're out on their own, it's not like they go, how do we transition them back into work?
Right.
It's a business. We're going to get back to work, but how do we transition them? Don't want to be hard on people. So we're going to have a little party and only do a partial day's work. No, you just turn the switch.
I think
Time to do homework, do homework. Time to work, time to work. And that's sort of it. It's like when we come home from vacation, it's not like how do we transition them to sleep in their own beds from, they were sleeping in other people's beds. So how do we don't do that. We just hit it, get it.
Yeah, give them a warning that it's going to happen. And
psych them up.
I think
talk it through.
The hardest was when our first one was off at college, and then they come home for like, back then it seemed like they were home for 6 weeks during Christmas. And so they're like, sleeping in, not having to do any schoolwork, and the others are like, oh, but that's life. You get to do that too when you go off.
Yeah, so yeah, that's it. V also has, glad you said that about grammar. This is something I struggle with, not knowing if we really should sit and study it out. Like I said, second language, later years, high school and all the rest, fine. What they need to do is they need to read out loud. They need to read. They need to use good grammar around you. And that's going to be amazing. And if you want them to read a grammar book, party on. I'm all for you. I'm just telling you that obsessing on that sort of thing, if that's the goal, go for it. If you want them to become good writers, have their own voice, actually good writers violate grammar rules and they do something cool with it. Violate, maybe not. They're more like they're bend it like Beckham or something, they're bending light a little bit or something through a prism. So the colors of language can come out in the uniqueness in the way they did it. E. Cummings, famous poet, his thing was to not use capitals. It was a thing.
And then in their they get it from being around people that have good grammar and reading books with good grammar. And then in their writing, you correct them, and they pick up on this. It doesn't have to be this singled out subject at all.
Right. So someone asked for book links. You can go to Amazon and just hit Fred Lybrand, Google, search it. Our website is independent homeschool.com. And that site will actually show you a place for our courses. So it'll give you a pretty good idea of what to do, what's going on, etc. So what other questions? I've got another one I'm going to try to copy and throw in here. But as I said, your questions, you're the priority. And then we can just make up stuff anyway. Let's see how we do this. It only takes so much of this information in the chat. But I'm learning. I can get better. I can learn. I can still learn. I hope. England, school in England, and is that where we are? Struggle.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize.
We're just having to split it up and put it in.
Well, it also this thing doesn't allow me to scroll properly. See? I should be able to make it bigger anyway. Golly. So really, is that where we were? Struggle.
And I really struggle. I think.
Oh, good. Next. I see how it works. I apologize.
We'll get there, guys. Hang in there with us. Be thinking of your questions.
This is so incompetent of them. I need to write Google and tell them, hey, there's a better way to do this, peeps. Now I got it. Okay, so here's the question. If you want to get started, you can read it out loud.
Sure. Hi, Dr. Fred. I've been diagnosed with ADHD. I'm a mom of 6 in my 30s. My whole life makes sense now. I have also noticed that my kids are showing signs of it. I homeschool in England, and I really struggle keeping to routines/systems. we forget a lot of things, and I feel like I'm all over the place. Do you have any tips on how I can cope better with this and change things for the better? And there's a little bit more. That's not up yet.
What's not?
Good question. The rest of the her.
It goes through better.
Change things for the better. The next, and then I.
This is so
Sorry,
strange.
guys. I feel like I get, yeah. Wait.
We're right here. What's left? That'll be close enough.
Basically, yes, the scheduling, the being all over the place, routine, needing routines and systems. Currently,
All right. So, struggle to keep a routine system. May repeat this. Currently studying about specific learning difficulties. Help me understand things more. I feel like I get to a point where I'm okay, we're doing well, then life happens and I struggle, get my head around life event, keep together. It takes me weeks to get back into things again. I hope this makes sense. You're able to help. So it's about ADHD and it's about more of a scattered, I'd call it more of a lateral thinker. So I have this same type challenge with some of the way my traits and personality and brain works. Um, so what you're really trying to do, the problem with someone that thinks laterally, you know what I mean by that. So instead of sequentially, step by step by step, a lateral thinker will think of parallel things, but it comes in handy because it's like make up a something that I could do a list of 10 things about, just anything, 10 ways to something.
10 ways to train a dog.
Okay, 10 ways to train a dog. So what I can do, the way my brain works laterally, is I can go in a bunch of directions. So I can go, you can train it naturally just by being around it because they'll learn words and all. You could hire a trainer. You could go to class. You could learn to train it in one thing and then another. You could read a good book on training. You could go find at a park the best trained dog that you see and ask them how they did it. You could probably work out like a chart of steps of a sequence, not just one thing, but we're going to first learn this, then learn this, then learn this. Another idea is actually what you want to do with a dog is teach them the word no first. And no means now listen for the next command. And you do that by getting a 7-Up can and putting pennies in it and tape it over, duct tape, and you shake and say no whenever you want them to stop and listen to you. And you always proceed whatever you're doing, no, and then you give an instruction. So anyway, there was about 7. But all I'm saying is my brain jumps around that way. And the problem is largely in organizing our homes, and especially with this kind of challenge, it's really about making decisions. So what's going on with a lateral thinker and a ADHD type brain or anything like that, or if you're just unorganized or maybe you're never taught or whatever, is you're actually caught making decisions constantly. So what do I want to work on next? What are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? And those decisions require deliberation. And that means you've got to deliberate, consider, think about it. And then once you've thought about it and you've decided, if you've really decided, a lot of times we say it, if you really decide, it means you're not going to visit that question again. It's done. This is why having a process is the way to go. You want to deliberate about what we're going to do for school every day. Every day. Now, when I say every day, I mean, when do we start? How long do you work on math? How long do this? When are we through? What we like to do is we'd have the subjects and they have their period of time. And when they're working on their stuff, we might work on our stuff, maybe around them, to model it or something. But we're doing a certain time. If Jody had a reading time, she had a reading time. She'd read the kids and, do the narration stuff. But the game was set as far as that goes, that we were not making decision. We're not going to revisit it. It's set. We might revisit it in 3 months put it on the calendar. But it's set. And so we started school at 7:30 and we did writing for an hour essentially. And then we did math for an hour, reading for an hour, um, reading for an hour, math for an hour, something like that. However, we broke it up. I like to end on math because they're motivated to get through and go do lunch. If they didn't get it done that time, they have to do it in a time in the afternoon, specific time. And once that's decided, the ADA, the ADHD or the attention deficit, oh, squirrel, the ADOS that I have, um, doesn't play a role because you've already decided. You're not caught in the decision making process. You've said, here's what we're doing. I'm following this process. Now, inside of that, you may need variety and fun. That's fine. Read something different. Read, you can mix it up for you, what you're working on each time. But when you set up that kind of process, you're golden. Now, I said every day, let me correct myself, every day. But if you have a zoo trip or a museum or whatever, so it interrupts that day. But our routine, our rhythm is this same thing. And so the more you can set up a process, the better off you are. So if you have this kind of orientation and every day you go, what are we having for supper? That's going to be a problem. This is why if you can have a routine, ideally, this is why, Wednesday was meatloaf night or something, I've seen it. If you set up a game plan of I have certain meals that we have, and maybe it's in a certain sequence. And if every Friday night is, junk food pizza night, fine, it's that night. But if you know what you're going to do each night, or you just have a set of recipes, let's say 10, you rotate through them, then you follow the recipe. You're not making it up as you go. I cook this and then I cook this and it takes this long. We set up the table. You have a sequence you go through. And once you know that, and I'm cooking this meal, I'm cooking lasagna, and you have a recipe for lasagna, then you just cook lasagna. And it's not a decision. The problem is when you're caught making decisions, right? So when I'm making up a list of ways to train your dog, so I'm jumping around with decisions, deliberating, throw things together. If I was going to tell you, if you said, give me the numbers in order from 1 to 10, well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's not me being lateral anything. That's me following a recipe in a sequence that I've learned. So the more you can set up, and this is why we have that course on how to homeschool in 30 minutes a day. When you learn to set up processes, and you do them one at a time, and you have a regular process, and even with the kids, this is how we're going to do it. In your reading time, you're on this book, and then you'll have that book, and the next book. There's variety in the books. But that sequence is the way we do it. And every day, what we did is we'd figure out reasonably how many pages they should be able to read in that book in our context, 2 hours of reading as they got older. We'd estimate the reading speed and estimate the pages. And it's like, you got to get to this page. And if you get to this page sooner, you get some time off, you take a break until the next subject. But having that, this is how we do it. This is the sequence. That's how you overcome it, because you're not deciding. Golfers do this, sports players, etc. They have a swing sequence. They have a way they approach things. And learning to set up a process and get out of decision making because you've decided to follow that process is the way to go. Doesn't mean you can't violate it, but this is how sanity works and how actually predictable results start happening.
Yeah, it frees you up. You're not having to make a million decisions a day. Your children actually love to know what's happening next, in the routine. Write it, have a kind of set routine for the day, have it written up, put it on the fridge, put it on the wall. This is what we do. We don't change up every day. If we get off, we get back onto it. And then, like I said, if in a couple of months it's not working for you and you want to revisit it, that's fine. But we're not doing that daily or weekly. We're sticking with, this is the game plan, and this is what we do.
Exactly. And let me stress, you're not doing this all at once. You want to work toward it. You don't have to, perfectly follow any of that, but you're wanting to build into it. And once everybody gets used to it, once they know, this is bedtime. I can lay in my bed and stay awake all night, like we'd tell them, or you can sleep, but you're in your bed. And so once everybody gets used to it, we do it, and you do it now anyway with certain things. You show up at certain things, you go through the process. If you go to church, generally church has a sequence, some order of service. It's saying hi to everybody, and then it's singing for a little bit, and then it's announcements, and it's meet and greet, and then it's a message, and it's communion, and then it's go have a great week, So it's, say people by on the way out. And so we all know how to fit into these sequences. Some of our brains don't do it that easily. But once we establish a pattern and we're not visiting the decision every time of what we're going to do now, what are we studying today? What are we up to today? That's how you can settle in. If you keep making decisions, you're going to be exhausted because you can only make a certain number a day before you're just exhausted. And so the less decisions you make and turn it over to processes or recipes that you've accepted, you ought to be absolutely golden. All right, got time for one more question. Somebody has something, but I think I gave a good shot at that. I don't know if it's helpful. I don't know if Lisa could make it, but it's out there now, and I'll let them know. You got any other thoughts about that?
Well, I know it can sound overwhelming if that's not the way you've done life, but it is so worth it to just spend some time, think through how do I want to kind of loosely schedule out our day and stick with that as best we can and work toward like you said, your kids aren't going, oh, I don't want to do this or that or that. No, this is what we do. We do this, then we do this, then we do this, then we do this. And it just settles everybody down. It settles you down.
Yeah, and don't hear this as totally mechanical.
Right.
You can schedule in fun times, variety times. You can shift the schedule. Sometimes I would go in and say, all right, we're not reading today. I've got something I want to teach you just out of the blue because I'm doing it. And because I wasn't torturing them, well, I may have been torturing them, but for the most part, since they didn't have to read and they got something different, they had a good attitude. I was totally fair about it. But you can, it's just like some people don't mind being interrupted if they can schedule it. So that would be on the extreme. They want everything scheduled. Most of us need to learn how to be interrupted, but we also have to learn how to quit interrupting ourselves. And that means we've got a certain amount we want to get done, and we have a sequence of how we do it and when. The more you settle in to a pattern for those things, as much as you can stand, I mean, at some point you still have to get up, move around, look at something different, change subjects. I think you're going to find it works gloriously. All right. I don't see any more questions unless there is a delay in here, but I'm going to assume not. It's been great, and hope this is helpful. And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to share our thoughts and our understanding, and it doesn't, for some reason, get tiring to me to say the same stuff if I do again and again. But it's really, most of what we're doing is principle based, and so we're trying to think about principles, not the exact technique, but what the reasoning, the logic, the principle is behind it. So then we can apply it in different ways. And you got to do your family. And we're not saying copy us, but we are saying there are principles that if you violate them, you're going to do it to your own harm. What do you want to say?
No, that's great, guys. Thanks. Good to be back.